I'd like to start with a commercial. In the next couple of days, you will be getting something in your email from the temple about a celebration or a commemoration of the 80th anniversary of Babi Yar, of the terrible massacre that took place in the Ukraine outside of Kiev on September 29th and 30th, 1941. 80 years ago next week. Babi Yar Park is a creation of Temple Sinai. I don't think everybody knows that, but it is. It's our park. It's your park. Obviously, it's a city park, but it's Temple Sinai's park. Just a quick introduction. In 1965, Lillian Hoffman and I were co-chair of the Committee of Concern for Soviet Jewry. We were appalled at the way in which the Soviet regime was treating our brothers and sisters in the Soviet Union. 2 million Jews were kept as if prisoners of conscience. And they had to go through the same rigmarole that 20 years earlier the Nazis had put Jews through in Western Europe. And what was that? Their jobs were taken away. They couldn't work for non-Jews. They couldn't attend university. They couldn't practice medicine. They couldn't practice law. They couldn't get jobs as engineers. They couldn't be scientists. They couldn't practice Judaism. Synagogues were closed. Religion was not for them, they said. They couldn't teach their children Hebrew. It was against the law. And those who disobeyed, many of them, were picked up off the street and sent to a gulag in Siberia for who knows how many years of who knows what deprivations, hard labor, lack of food, and the cold, the endless cold that they faced. So Lillian Hoffman and I, with the committee of concern that we put together, started to write letters to prisoners of conscience. We started to petition our senators and our representatives to do something about it. The Jackson-Vanik bill ultimately came about, in which the United States government yelled and screamed at the Soviet Union to let up, to allow the Jews their life, but to little avail in the 1960s. And so in 1967, just after we started Temple Sinai, Lily and I decided we needed to do something outrageous, something that would shock the community, something that would show the rest of the world that we were serious about this issue. And so we thought about it and decided that what we needed was a memorial to a living people. And what better memorial could there be than a memorial to the dead of that same people? And so we remembered Babi Yar and the massacre there. When we read Yevgeny Yevtushenko's brilliant tone poem about Babi Yar, no grass grows in Babi Yar, only dirt is over the heads and the bodies of Jews who were massacred there. And so we thought, a park, Babi Yar, a second Babi Yar here in Denver. And we found such a park. Empty territory all around. Denver was half the size that it is now, and there hardly any buildings were going on along Havana. And so we found this beautiful piece of land on the corner of Havana and I live. And it's bordered on the south by Yale. And 22 acres, beautiful land, high up, and it had a ravine. And so we called Governor John Love and went in to see him. And we talked about our issue, about the Jews of silence, as Elie Wiesel wrote about. And Governor Love was very appreciative. And he called the mayor, Bill McNichols at the time, and he made an appointment. And we went to see Mayor McNichols. And Mayor McNichols also was involved in the process, and he said to his assistant, Ben Bezoff, also a member of the tribe, he said, Ben, make it happen. And Ben Bezoff called Paul Hensel, who was the representative of that piece of territory for the city and county of Denver, and within a few weeks, we had a Denver City Park called Bobby Yar. But you know, a park is just empty land with a sign on it, and there was nothing there in commemoration. We needed somebody somehow to build that park, to make it into a memorial park, into a park that was special, unusual. And who else could I think of, and certainly Lillian agreed, than our own Helen Ginsberg. Helen's no stranger to Temple Sinai. Her work is all around us. The eternal light above the ark, Helen's creation, her design. She sculpted it, she formed it, and she saw it installed where it is. The magnificent stained glass window in our foyer, that was Helen's design, and she saw it through to its completion and its installation. And the menorah with the little bulb lights over the branches, that also was Helen's creation, to house the names of people who voluntarily gave great amounts of money to build our first temple building on Dartmouth, Oliver Sholem. Helen accepted graciously with some amount of trepidation, and she got a committee together of Jews and non-Jews, and two of those Jews were members of Temple Sinai. Both of them, I think you know. One was Ted Ruskin, Tombstone Ted, as we affectionately called him, who was also involved in helping Temple Sinai get the land that we now use as the Sinai Cemetery at Mount Nebo. And the other person was Alan Gass. And Alan, an architect, designed and had built Old Blue, our first ark, the one that was at First Plymouth that rolled in and out of the chapel and into a closet, and the one that we brought to the synagogue on Dartmouth Street, and the one that ultimately moved with us when we came into the Pitts Elementary School. That ark was our ark from about 1973 until the late 1990s and maybe even into the 2000s. So Alan and Ted and Helen were responsible for building the park into what it is today. They raised the funds, they hired the architect to design it, and they designed the park with paths that go from one place to another, 6 points in the shape of a Star of David. And if you pass over in an airplane, you can see the star clearly on your way into or out of Centennial or DIA. Temple Sinai is certainly to be thanked for that park. Elie Wiesel was really impressed. When we talked to him, he said, I have to come out and dedicate that park. And he did. He flew out to Denver and dedicated the park in 1970 on a cold, blustery day that many here remember and were there. So on the 30th of September, on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock in the evening, there will be an anniversary commemoration of the 80th anniversary of Bobby Yar in Kiev, and it will take place in our Bobby Yar Park. This is not a park just to sit there. It's a park to visit. Not a park with playgrounds. It's a park with commemorations. It's a park to read in. And I was greatly honored to have been given the opportunity of writing every inscription in that park. From the opening monoliths that form the opening to the the little fountain, the little stream of water, and the huge tone poem that was written upon it that sits in the grove of remembrance, and especially the few words, meaningful, I think, especially meaningful at the end of the boxcar, or the bridge, as you wish, that goes across the ravine and reminds us of that other place. The Committee of Concern went on to help actually break the chains that bound the Jews to Russia. And so in the early 1980s and in the middle 1980s, those Jews came to Israel, and those Jews came to America and to Argentina and to parts of Europe, and they reestablished the Jewish community in Germany and in France and in parts of England. So we can be proud of the park, what it stands for, and what it did. Go there. Take your children. Take your grandchildren. Walk through it. Read the inscriptions. Talk about the Holocaust. Talk about what life must have been like 80 years ago, 60 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, as the Jews were leaving Russia. Incidentally, one last thought. I have a baby naming at Bobby Yar in a couple of weeks. So I asked the family where they wanted to name their child, and they said Bobby Yar Park. And I said, why is that? And they said, because in 2 days, 30,000 Jews were lined up over a ravine and shot to death by Nazis and by their Ukrainian helpers. 30,000 people lost their lives and lost their names. And we would like to give a Jewish child a Jewish name in a place of life at Bobby Yar in their memory. Visit the park. Don't let it sit empty. Now that the commercial is over, an old man, and I use that expression more circumspectly than I used to, eased himself down on the other end of the park bench. I had been there a while, looking at nothing in particular, just enjoying the warm late summer afternoon, watching squirrels and birds chase and flit about. A moment passed, then two, before he spoke. Come here often? Not often enough, I answered. I really like the expanse of grass and the flowers, and the clouds seem to hover above in odd formations. Good place to let the mind wander and see where it chooses to go. He smiled perfunctorily. I had no idea I would come here this morning, he said. I just needed to get out of the house and walk a bit. I saw you sitting here and thought maybe you were another person who needed to get out and about. You see, I just lost my wife a few weeks ago, and the joy seems to have gone out of the days and out of the nights. Nothing is as it was. Foods have lost their interest. Colors appear duller now. I let his words rest on the bench between us for a few moments before responding. Tell me, I said, how would you describe beauty? Seemed like a question out of the blue, and so sudden that it kind of took him aback, ruffled him a bit. What's beauty got to do with loss and sadness, he asked. Fairly much everything, I said. Because when you begin to see beauty in color, or in taste, or in sound, or in nature, or in writings, or in artwork, or in people, or in acts of kindness, you begin to find joy in life again. And I suppose you have an idea of what is beautiful, he asked. He paused as he said it, not so much because he thought it was a challenge, but more like an invitation for me to continue the conversation. So I recited a sermon I once gave about my earliest appreciation of something beautiful. What is beautiful, I asked. It's sort of a matter of personality or preference. Eye of the beholder sort of thing, you know. For some, it's a seascape, cresting waves, breaking on craggy rocks. Others find beauty in a mountain storm or in a challenge met, in a child's face, in a noble thought, in an adoring pet or a tender touch. For me, all that is beautiful and fills me with joy, but when I think of poignant beauty, believe it or not, my first thought is of an old tree we used to have in our front yard. I was about 5.5 when I first became aware of it. That was the summer I learned to climb. And day after day, I'd go sit on the old oak's limbs, dreaming a young boy's dreams on a young boy's days of summer. I started school that year, as I recall, September. The days chilled off early that fall. I remember one day coming home from school only to be amazed at the sudden change my tree had undergone. Sturdy, unfailing oak with leaves of forest green had turned so suddenly yellow, orange, and crimson hued, or the colors simply took my breath away. I sat in her branches all that afternoon, touching this leaf and that, much as one might sit by the side of an ailing friend holding a hand. I was awed by the colors and enchanted by the perfume of nature in transition. I could hardly wait to get home from school each day to see my tree turning. Her deep-hued leaves now more and more graced the lawn as branches bared their limbs to the graying skies. That tree, going through its preparations for winter, treated me to a display of beauty that to this day still pleases me, still remains significantly etched in memory. And each September, at the first hint of fall, that tree in reverie comes back to me, and I, in turn, to it. The truth be told, there was always a hint of sadness in thoughts about that oak. Losing her leaves like that, I often wondered, what does she get in return that would make the transition worthwhile? And then I came across an article in a Nature magazine. It started off by saying we are liable to think that cold weather kills a tree's leaves, and that it takes a winter of rest in order for the tree to recover from this weakening shock. But no, to the contrary. What happens is this. Upon the approach of cold weather, all the nutrients in the leaves rush to the trunk of the tree to be stored there. This protoplasm evacuates cell leaf after leaf cell, and when the last drop has left, the leaf, now but an empty shell of nutrients past, can ride the next breeze to the ground. Winter, then, is when a healthy tree stores up its juices, recounts its strengths, and prepares for the promise of springtime. I turned then to my bench neighbor and said, We could learn much from the oak, you and I. Nature parades her lessons before us and begs us to take notice. We are each like the oak, and bereavement is our winter chill. Our loved ones drop from our outstretched embrace, no longer a part of us, no longer physically attached, no longer sharing the seasons of our trials, the seasons of our joys. There are those who envisage the loss of a loved one as an emptying process. They view themselves as suddenly emotionally denuded and left unprotected from the elements. They see themselves as so much raw wood, soft and hollow, ready, almost expecting, almost wanting to fall apart, to disintegrate. Be like the oak, nature teaches. She loses her leaves, but takes their essence inward. Their life is her nutrient. Their history becomes her strength, her armor against tomorrow's caprice. A picture of poignant beauty? I see it in my mind's eye. Yes, the tree garbed in green, relationships in full bloom. Yes, the tree mantled in reds and ambers, loved ones falling away from our reach. Yes, the stately terebinth, branches bare, puffs of snow clinging to her trunk, and she, serene, assured, stands through it all. A picture of poignant beauty. I'll draw it for you. One who lost a lover, a child, a dear one, a friend, whose years of relationship, be they few or be they many, were savored as an elixir warming the soul. When the cruel winds of sorrow and the bitter chill of separation howl round the heart, as lo they will, indeed they will, then remember the oak that stands in sublime majesty, resolute, determined, resolved to endure the furies of winter and to blossom forth again to springtime and to life, replenished and renewed by that which was left to it, not emptied by loss, but nourished by and strengthened by the memories of moments shared, and so made whole again by cherishing the beauty of what once was. The oak grows stronger in loss, and we, by remembering our dear ones in the days of their most vital greenery, can find strength not only to endure, but indeed to anticipate renewal in the coming seasons of our lifetime. To find strength in loss and beauty in memory. To find strength in loss and beauty in memory. Aha, my newfound congregant intoned. Can we meet again sometime, he asked. Tomorrow, perhaps. Sure, why not, I smiled. We're both retired. Same time, same bench, different sermon. May the memory of our dear ones become as the nutrients that buoy us in our downward moments, and then enable us to find emotional and spiritual strength to flourish anew, season after season, not only in peace, but also in the joy of the beauty of life.